Welcome to Let's Talk Democracy. I'm Tina Johnson, your host. Join me as we talk to the people on the front lines, the change makers and activists who are building a stronger, healthier democracy for all of us. Whether you're looking for expert advice, a new perspective, or just a little inspiration, this is where you'll find it. In today's episode, The Double-Edged Sword of Polls, we're joined by pollster Doug Kaplan to unpack the complicated and sometimes controversial role that polling plays in American democracy. Together, we dive into how polls both reflect and shape public opinion, why they sometimes miss the mark, and how shifting voter behavior, rapidly evolving technology, and the national mood all impact what polling can and can't tell us. This coming off of the recent elections in the United States, I wanted to have a conversation with Doug to explore what today's polling data really means, where it falls short, and why interpretation matters. We also look ahead to the 2026 elections and discuss how everyday people can use polling as a tool for understanding our political landscape and strengthening democratic participation. Let's get into it. Hey, Doug, thanks for joining me today. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Thank you for having me.
I wanted to start off with a big picture question, because normally when we talk about polling in a democracy, we tend to think of it as a mirror reflecting what the public thinks. But some critics say polling can actually shape what voters think. So I wanted to ask you, in your experience, how has and how does polling both reflect and shape democratic decision-making in the U.S. in particular?
Well, it's definitely an important barometer of what people's opinions are. If you see your candidate down by 15 points, the negative is it could keep people home because it looks like their candidate is out of the race. So that's the negative. The positive thing is people have an understanding of where the elections are today, and they have a sense of public opinion. There's lots of polls and lots of averages to look at. People seem to enjoy reading them.
So we just finished the election cycle in the U.S. And after seeing the results of the polls, what do you think the data got right and what do you think it missed?
In New Jersey, the gentleman that lost, he only lost to Mickey Sherrill. He only lost last election to Phil Murphy by 2 or 3 points. So the thinking was energy prices are high in New York. It's controlled by Democrats. The taxes are very, very high in New Jersey. The thinking was the Republican would do better this time, but it was a rout. The Democrat won by about 12 points. So the polls were off there. In Virginia, they were very accurate, and in New York.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things, right? When the polls are not in alignment with the outcome, I think a lot of people, and I hear this from people, the polls don't get it right. What is that process and taking all the previous data and then inputting into the new reality of a new election cycle?
You have to have a model where, you weight the polls on what you think the turnout model was. In New Jersey, it was a state that Trump only lost by 5. The election before that, he lost by maybe 10, 12, 14 points.
If you were talking to someone who was like, hey, the polls didn't get it right, how would you encourage or educate people on how to read and interpret the polling results?
So if you see 10 polls out there, but then you see one that favors your candidate, kind of look at what the averages are versus cherry picking. That would be one, because usually the averages are very close. They were close in New York. They were close in Virginia. They're very close. Real Clear Politics has them, 538. Decision Headquarters has them. So they have, the averages. Polling is just a barometer of where you're at today, not where what's going to happen in 2 weeks.
Is it possible for listeners to tell if a poll is solid or maybe a little shaky when you have the data that's being presented?
You can look at the methodology, and you can look at, the turnout models compared to other elections. Look at the polls. The pollsters are all graded. You can look at their history. You can look at it as if it's a partisan poll, meaning is it sponsored by a conservative group or a labor union or something of that nature. So you have to take lots of things into account. So I like to look at individual polls and I like to look at the averages when I'm looking at polls to kind of get a feeling of where things are at. We don't poll everywhere. We didn't poll in New Jersey, for example. We did in Virginia. We're very accurate. I just look at the averages for my own knowledge to get an understanding of where things are at. Because if you take all the polls and you combine them and you get an average, they're usually very, very close to where the results will be.
Virginia was a huge win for the Democrats. In your polling, what was the thing that was driving voters towards the Democrats?
I think the economy, I think suburban educated people in Virginia, they came for Democrats. I think some Trump voters voted for the Democrat. So I think you had a combination of all three. Trump wasn't on the ballot, so he wasn't able to draw infrequent rural voters out into this election. And I think the Democrats had a much better candidate than the Republicans this cycle in Virginia. New Jersey, not so much. In New Jersey, it was pretty even on the candidate level. But in Virginia, I don't even think Trump endorsed the candidate of Virginia. She lacked money and all of those things. And the Democrats had a congresswoman who was very popular, very moderate. She won by, I think it was 12 or 13 last time I looked. It changes because of mail in ballots and all that. The attorney general wound up winning. He had a scandal. He wound up winning big. The lieutenant governor won. So Democrats, which is a blue state, Virginia is a blue state, but the Democrats did better than, let's say, Kamala Harris did. So they overperformed in Virginia and New Jersey.
What can polling do and what can it do?
Yeah, I mean, what it can do is tell you where people are at right now, but it can't tell you where they're going to be at in 2 weeks or a month or a year. So you can kind of get an accurate feeling of where they're at now. And, with 2026 coming up, you have this House on the line, governorships, state houses, Senate. So it'll be interesting times.
The polling that you did in New York, were there things that were in alignment for the people that you polled and why they went and voted the way they did?
Cuomo did better than some people thought. He lost by 10. Say that de Blasio won by 20 or 30, Adams won by 20 or 30. So Mamandi only won by 10. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in the next 4 years there. But yeah, it was in line what I thought would happen. The Republican hurt Cuomo, Curtis Sliwa. The race would have been much more competitive if he wasn't in it. But New York was in line with where I thought it would be.
And what were some of the polling questions for New Yorkers?
More of a head to head. It was really a age thing. If you were under 40, you voted for Mamandi. Over 40, you voted for Cuomo. And the young people really turned out this election.
I think that's a kind of an interesting part of the process of voting and then having poll numbers because from Virginia, you said there were three things. One, you had that the economy, suburban voters went out. Trump wasn't on the ticket, therefore there wasn't that rural draw to come out and vote. And then when you go to New York, you have a totally different set of criterion for the voters. You have young people coming out to support a young, progressive, democratic socialist versus the older generation coming out to support Cuomo. So how does polling have to adjust to the states and the communities that they're trying to get an understanding of where voters are when the needs or the criterion is so different, can be vastly different for why people want to go out and vote?
It has to adjust on the area too. For instance, Miami, very, very hard area to reach people. It's just becoming much harder to reach people, which makes it much more expensive. So if it's more expensive, you see less publicly released polls, and that I think hurts people and democracy because the less information people have, less knowledge they have.
And when you say it's harder in places like Miami, how much of that has to do with not having access to, I know in the US, it's landlines. It used to be a really strong vehicle by which pollsters could reach people, but folks changed their cell phone numbers or they don't answer numbers they don't know. How is technology, social media playing a role in the way in which pollsters are able to contact and engage voters?
Yeah, landlines is just impossible. There was a point where it had 98% penetration in this country. So everybody had a landline. And then slowly it went away, and then older people just had them. Now, maybe 10 or 15% of the population have them. And mobile phones, a lot of people have filters on their phones. So if the phone number is unknown, it comes up as spam. So it's just much harder to reach people, and especially harder to reach populations. And like you said, people change their phone numbers a lot. So people are much more transient, and they're harder to reach. So you run up against all those different things.
You have the online panels, the tech
Yeah.
surveys. I think they even have what artificial intelligence sentiment and analysis. How is that reshaping what's possible in polling?
The texting works great. The response is a little bit less. The panels work very good. They're a younger, more wealthier set of group, something that has to be kept in mind. Artificial intelligence is new to polling, so we'll see. I haven't seen it make a big change or anything like that, but it's coming for sure.
I mean, you've been doing polling for 15 years. I'm curious, is there a future where polling will really not matter? And I'm asking that question because so often polling does miss the mark, doesn't accurately come close to where voters are. And sometimes they get it right. Like you got it right last election cycle with Trump. I think you guys were one of the few polling companies that actually got it almost spot on. But that's not the case for a majority of pollsters. Where do you think the future of polling and the value of it is, especially in a democracy? Because somehow polling becomes this vehicle by which the average person who's looking at any news coverage on politics, we see the numbers, we absorb it, we talk about it. Trump's numbers are in the toilet, or Democrats aren't doing as well as they should based on this and that. And yet it doesn't really tell a full picture story of what's happening. It's a snapshot of what's potentially going to happen. And then when it doesn't get it correct, it becomes this question of how much of it is reliable, and should we be relying on it as the political environment changes in drastic ways, and then the way people relate to information and democracy.
Yeah, I think, listen, it's the barometer that we have to measure public opinion. It's definitely not going anywhere. I mean, people, they used to go in the shopping malls to poll people. So, I mean, it's get the Gallup has been around since 1930. So it's definitely not going anywhere. It's going to transition just like anything else. And it has. I mean, you know, when we started out, it was just really automated phone calls to landlines, and that's ended. And we moved to different mode, and that's what'll happen. You adapt.
Do you see that adaptation maybe going to the malls, although malls are becoming extinct, but going back on the ground and actually engaging people?
No, I think the internet, it'll morph more on the internet, social media, stuff like that. Or if you do it in person, it's just too expensive.
So we've got the polling, we've got the way in which people engage, and I'm wondering, did you see or were there any blind spots in this election, like modeling voter turnout or enthusiasm versus younger voter participation? Did you see any blind spots in the polling from your colleagues?
Yeah, I think the Democrats did better across the board, but I think they did better in Virginia than people thought, and I think they did much better in New Jersey than people thought. The governor's race is really what matters. Abigail Spangler, I think they had about 10 to 12, and I think she won by about 13 to 14. So it's within the margin. It was very good. New Jersey was a miss, and I need to read more into that of why it happened. But New Jersey was definitely a miss by many, and New York was accurate.
Yeah, the enthusiasm for Mondani. three-person race, and you had Cuomo, who was problematic, and then Silwall, also problematic for lots of different reasons. In my last episode, I talked with Professor Weber about the politics of hope, and he just came with a message that resonated with people, and they needed that at that particular point in time. But in New Jersey, why did they get it wrong?
In a state that Trump overperformed this time, the Democrats overperformed this time. I mean, it's a Democratic state. I mean, they control everything, and they just performed overwhelmingly well. They did well. I think it could tell you something about the national mood right now in these elections when you see blowouts. One blowout, maybe, but then you see second one, you see another one here, then maybe you see special elections. So you think the national mood right now is turning against the incumbent party, which is something that happens always in our country. It happened to Obama, happened to Bush, it happened to Trump the first time, and it could be happening the second time as a government shutdown. So in Virginia, that's another reason that I think she did very well. And so you have a lot of different factors. Healthcare rates came
Health.
out November 1st. So it's lots of different factors are out there right now.
So with all of those factors out there, and they've been out there for quite some time, some of it new, but not all of it. I mean, the shutdown's been going on for about a month now. Healthcare's been an issue for a while. Why then did pollsters miss that if these factors were a part of the thinking of voters?
A lot of the issues are new. It's not that healthcare is new, it's that the rates came out on November 1st. So if you're on the exchange, you saw that your rates have doubled. That's the first thing. The second thing is the government shutdown. It's really starting to affect people now. You're seeing flights being cut. You're seeing the subsidies being cut on the Obamacare. People are furloughed. The SNAP benefits have been cut. So you're seeing all these different things that are happening just in the last week. So it's really starting to affect people. People are noticing it, and I think the whole New Republicans are responsible for it. At this point, we'll see how it goes. Overall.
I think that's really important because, again, it's something you just spoke about a few minutes ago, that things change for the voter, right? If the election was on October 31st, it might have been a different outcome in New Jersey without some of these indicators that came out before the election, or not. But you don't know what's going to affect the voter, even when you have the polling. That's what it sounds like.
Exactly. The polling is in the present, not the future. It, it is not a crystal ball.
On that note, I would like for us to pretend like we have a crystal ball, and if we were to look ahead, what lessons should both pollsters and the public carry forward from 2024?
That anything can happen. Our country is a 50-50 country right now. It's very, very close. The 2024 election was very, very close. Harris had 100 days. She only lost by 1 percentage point. In the swing state, she did much better. I think the lessons to be learned is that 2024 was pretty accurate. I think that we just have to get the turnout, get the hard to reach population, and look at the targeting. And I think we'll be on the right path.
Would that be the same process for 2026 for the congressional races that will be on the ballot?
Yeah, congressional races are trickier because there's so many of them, right? And there's so many of them, but there's only 20 that might be competitive.
Even with those redistricting efforts, the gerrymandering that's going on, those races, there still will only be 20 races that will be competitive.
I think so, yeah. Because of the gerrymander, the races are being set up for incumbents. The Republicans only control the House by a couple of seats.
You have 20 competitive races in 2026, helped by the fact that their districts are gerrymandered so that they have voters who are going to vote for them. But then you have this disillusionment with the current state of political affairs in the U.S. I mean, Trump's approval ratings in the toilet, Congress's approval ratings in the toilet. The Republican Party has a negative aura negative energy about it so that people are really disenchanted with them as a political party. Do any of those things play into the way voters vote regardless of the district that they've been gerrymandered into? Will people vote even if they're Republican? They go, you know what, I cannot either vote at all, or I have to vote for the Democrats because I can't vote for the Republicans.
We'll have to see. I don't know if it'll be that. I think you might have people staying home. People could be disillusioned, or they're infrequent. They don't care. They don't care about off-year elections. They only care about presidential elections. And it should be a year where Democrats do very well because the incumbent party generally doesn't do well in off-year elections or midterm elections.
Can you explain why that is? The party in power tends not to do well in off-year elections.
Americans get tired very quickly of the party in power. That's why they say get all your stuff done in the first year or two. If you look at all the scandals and all the stuff that's happened, let's say since 1972, they've all happened in the second term, third year. It's always the hardest time in the president because they usually lose control of Congress. They usually lose control of Senate. I'm not saying that's going to happen this time because I have no idea what the gerrymandering that's happening, how that's going to affect. Florida might be next, and that's 3 seats that could go the other way. So we have to see. And we'll see about the Senate. But the House, the Democrats could be in good shape. They could win the House back.
I think people are feeling, from what I've been hearing from news outlets, is okay, the Democrats are on the road to victory in the 2026 election. But again, I would say this to people on this podcast all the time. If you want an outcome in an election, you got to vote. And you got to do the work. So you can't assume that the polls are the Cassandras of how the 2026 election cycle will end up. The idea is that the blue wave, the momentum of the political environment is moving towards the Democrats. And perhaps it will continue, but who knows what will happen in the next year.
You don't know. I mean, November is 1 year from now. The biggest issue could be an issue we're not even talking about. It could be tariffs. The Supreme Court rules against the president on tariffs, and that could be the main issue we're talking about. So you just don't know.
I think that's something that's exciting that you cannot predict, but also frustrating because you wish that you could predict because it would make people's lives a little bit more sane. I think that's why some folks have a hard time with polls because it's like, I wanted to stabilize my anxiety about what's happening politically, but it really is just, hey, we ask the questions from ordinary citizens, what they think about these issues, and you poll from there and you have data from average people. So I think this is applied for people. Hey, if you get a pollster calling, pick up the phone or fill out that survey. Is that helpful for folks to be more engaged with pollsters in order to help you all do a better job?
100%. Absolutely.
So you heard it here. This is a survey that it's worth spending some time doing. So I wanted to ask this. So if democracy depends on understanding the will of the people, what's the pollster's role in the story? Are you interpreters, mirrors, or storytellers?
I think information gatherers, people that give information, and the media tells the story. I think pollsters should be fair down the line.
Your background is in political science and you are a pollster. You do strategies around this work of political engagement and I think political education and awareness. What, if any, advice do you have from this worldview for people who are really either engaged, getting engaged, thinking about engagement in the political process of voting or actively trying to understand the information that's coming out to them about the state of affairs in the United States?
Yeah, it's obviously important to vote, and I think the pendulum always swings. You think that one party has a majority, and then it swings. So it always does in this country. We haven't had a party went 3 terms since 1980 to 88. So it's the same party. So it's 3 terms in a row. So it's very, very hard.
I appreciate that illustration, the pendulum, because I do feel that a lot of it is that there is a constant movement of people's feelings. I spoke about this with 2 guests now, and it's the perception of their reality of what's happening in the world around them, and so that shifts the pendulum quite often, and folks do feel in so many different ways that they are not on stable ground. Are there things that you gather in your data collection from ordinary people, what they care about, what matters to them, and how that moves them towards engaging politically with folks that will get them to the end of X? If it's better healthcare access, if it's education, if it's climate, is there something there that is a thread that you see that people have in common?
Gives people an understanding of what's going on. And, you can decide how you're going to vote, what activism you're going to do, what you plan on doing, if any. So I think it's an important tool.
How can people use it as a tool outside of the media? Because I think that's the other thing. So you get the information and you are like, I heard about this poll. How can they be used as tools by ordinary people?
Information gathering, news. When the jobs report numbers come out, it gives you a sense of what's going on in the economy. And that's done by polling. So much of what we see is done by polling, GDP or, much of it is done by polling. You look at it and you kind of figure out what's going on, along with reading different newspapers of different online sites of different spectrums there, some right, some left. So you kind of some in the middle, so you can kind of figure out different views of what's going on and figure it out for yourself. You can come to an opinion.
Some people see polling as part of the political establishment. What is your view of polling as a tool? Is it part of the political establishment, or is it part of the public information giving?
I think it's more part of the public information gathering, media, news. The polls showed Bernie Sanders where he's at, or Mamandi, or Trump winning, and they weren't part of the political establishment. So it's just an effective news gathering tool.
From this conversation, I'm gaining a greater appreciation for the roles of polls. If it's done well, it's an accurate snapshot of what people are thinking.
Of course.
So it may not be what I'm thinking, but it's probably what the average person is thinking. And I think that is something that's invaluable. So even if you don't agree with the poll, there's something in the poll that's telling you this is what people are thinking.
Agreed.
And I think that is the power, perhaps, of polling, is that if you can understand where the needle is moving, even if you don't see the future of that.
I think it's just great for information gathering and understanding news, understanding where things are at.
I really appreciate you.
Thank you so much.
In today's episode, we broke down the complex role polling plays in American democracy. We explored how polls can both mirror public sentiment and subtly shape voter behavior, why polls sometimes miss the mark, and what makes certain states harder to measure than others. We explored the shifting technology, turnout models, and late-breaking events, and how they impact accuracy, and why poll averages remain more reliable than any single result. I would like to highlight 3 takeaways. 1, polls are snapshots, not predictions. They show where public opinion stands today, not where it will land once late-breaking events or shifting moods take hold. 2, polling accuracy depends on reach and methodology. Technology, turnout models, and hard-to-contact voters all shape how reliable a poll is and why averages matter more than any single number. 3, polls inform democracy, but they don't replace participation. They offer valuable insight into the public mood, but the real power still remains from voters showing up, staying engaged, and doing the work. If you want a stronger, healthier democracy, your voice matters. Stay informed, stay engaged, And the next time a pollster reaches out, take a moment to participate. Make your voice count at the ballot box. And don't miss a single episode of Let's Talk Democracy. Subscribe now on your favorite podcast platform. And as usual, you can send me an email with questions or comments to tina@patternchangelab.com. Talk to you soon.